Welcome to GoldMind Stories. The prestigious Thornfield Concert Hall buzzed with anticipation as 38-year-old Marcus Chen finished polishing the brass fixtures on the grand stage. His olive green custodial uniform and cleaning supplies marked him as part of the maintenance crew. Nearly invisible to the elegantly dressed patrons who would soon fill the red velvet seats for the evening's gala performance, Marcus had been working as a janitor at Thornfield for 2 years, a job that allowed him the flexibility to pick up his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, from school and be home with her in the evenings. The work was honest and steady, paying enough to cover their modest apartment and Emma's needs. Though it was a far cry from the life he had once imagined for himself, tonight was the annual Thornfield Foundation Gala, a black-tie fundraising event that brought together the city's wealthiest philanthropists, business leaders, and cultural elite. The hall gleamed under the warm stage lights as Marcus made his final preparations, ensuring that every surface was perfect for the distinguished guests who would arrive within the hour. As Marcus cleaned around the concert grand piano that dominated the center of the stage, he could not help but pause and look at the magnificent instrument. The Steinway's polished black surface reflected the stage lights like a mirror, and Marcus felt the familiar ache of longing that he had learned to suppress over the years. Almost finished there, Marcus, called out James Wellington, the 52-year-old CEO of Wellington Industries and chairman of the Thornfield Foundation Board. Wellington wore an impeccably tailored black tuxedo and carried himself with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to commanding attention in any room he entered. "Yes, sir, Mr. Wellington," Marcus replied, stepping back from the piano. "Everything should be ready for tonight's performance." Wellington approached the stage, checking his gold watch with the practiced air of someone whose time was measured in millions of dollars. "Excellent. The maestro should be arriving shortly for his sound check." As Wellington spoke, several other board members and major donors began filtering into the hall for the pre-event reception. Marcus recognized many of them from his 2 years of working at the venue. Titans of industry, celebrated artists, and society figures whose names regularly appeared in the business and culture sections of the newspaper. "You know, Marcus," Wellington said, a hint of amusement entering his voice as he gestured toward the piano, "I have always wondered if any of our staff have hidden musical talents." "Do you play at all?" Marcus felt his cheeks warm slightly at the question. "A little, sir. Nothing professional." Wellington's eyebrows raised with interest. "Really? What kind of things can you play?" Before Marcus could answer, Wellington had turned to address the growing crowd of elegantly dressed guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying easily through the acoustically perfect hall, "I have just discovered that our custodial staff member Marcus here claims to have some piano skills. What do you say we have a little entertainment before the real show begins?" A murmur of amused interest rippled through the crowd. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized that Wellington was treating this as a novelty. A bit of light entertainment to amuse the wealthy patrons before the serious music began. "Mr. Wellington," Marcus said quietly, "I do not think that would be appropriate. I am here to work, not to perform." "Nonsense," Wellington declared, clearly enjoying what he saw as harmless fun. "It is a gala after all. Everyone should contribute to the entertainment. Besides, how often do we get to hear what our maintenance staff can do with a $2 million piano?" The crowd laughed appreciatively at Wellington's comment, and Marcus could see that several people were already taking out their phones to record what they assumed would be an amusing spectacle. A working-class janitor attempting to play classical music for an audience of cultural sophisticates. Marcus looked out at the sea of expectant faces, many wearing expressions of condescending amusement, and felt something shift inside him. These people saw him as a curiosity, a source of entertainment that would make for a good story at their next cocktail party. They had no idea who he really was or what he had sacrificed to be here in this custodial uniform. "What would you like me to play?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the racing of his heart. Wellington grinned and gestured grandly toward the piano. "Surprise us. Play whatever you think will impress this distinguished crowd." Marcus walked slowly to the piano bench, his cleaning cloth still clutched in one hand. He set it carefully aside and sat down, adjusting the bench to the proper height with movements that were automatic after years of practice. His hands found their familiar position above the keys, and for a moment, Marcus allowed himself to remember who he had been before life had forced him to choose between his dreams and his responsibilities as a father. Marcus began to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9. Number 2. The first notes floated through the concert hall with a clarity and beauty that immediately transformed the atmosphere from one of amused anticipation to something approaching reverence. Marcus' fingers moved across the keys with the fluid grace of someone who had spent countless hours perfecting his technique, bringing out every nuance of Chopin's delicate and emotionally complex composition. As the piece progressed, the crowd fell completely silent. The expressions of condescending amusement faded from their faces, replaced by genuine surprise and growing admiration. This was not a janitor stumbling through a simple tune. This was a trained musician performing one of the most beloved pieces in the classical repertoire with professional skill and deep emotional understanding. Marcus lost himself in the music, feeling the familiar joy of artistic expression that he had denied himself for so long. This was who he truly was beneath the custodial uniform. A classically trained pianist who had given up his performing career to provide stability for his daughter after his wife died in a car accident 4 years earlier. Wellington stood transfixed, watching Marcus' hands dance across the keyboard with a skill that made it clear this was not some hidden hobby, but serious musical training. The CEO's expression had shifted from amused condescension to something approaching awe, as he realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. When Marcus finished a nocturne, the silence in the hall was profound. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke, as if they were afraid that any sound might break the spell that had been cast by the music. Then Wellington began to applaud, slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. The rest of the crowd followed, their applause building to a standing ovation that echoed through the concert hall with genuine appreciation rather than polite obligation. Marcus stood from the piano bench, his face flushed with the emotion of having shared his gift publicly for the first time in years. He looked out at the crowd of wealthy, powerful people who were now seeing him as something other than invisible service staff. "Marcus," Wellington said, approaching the stage with an expression that held newfound respect. "That was absolutely extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that?" "I graduated from the New England Conservatory 12 years ago," Marcus replied quietly. "I was building a career as a performance pianist when my wife died and I became a single father. I needed steady income and reliable hours, so I took this job to make sure I could provide for my daughter." The crowd murmured with understanding and sympathy as they processed this information. These were people who understood sacrifice and difficult choices, even if most of their sacrifices involved business decisions rather than choosing between dreams and family responsibilities. "Marcus," Wellington continued, "I have to ask, why have you never mentioned your musical background? We host dozens of events here every year that could benefit from someone with your talents." Marcus looked out at the audience of elegantly dressed philanthropists and business leaders, then back at Wellington. "Mr. Wellington, when you're trying to support a young child on a janitor's salary, you learn to focus on keeping your job rather than asking for special treatment. I never wanted anyone to think I was not serious about my work here." Wellington nodded slowly, clearly processing the implications of what Marcus had shared. "Marcus, would you be willing to play one more piece? Something of your own choosing?" Marcus considered the request, then sat back down at the piano. This time he played Bach's Air on the G string, a piece that had been his daughter Emma's favorite lullaby when she was younger. As the hauntingly beautiful melody filled the concert hall, Marcus thought about Emma, who was spending the evening with their neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, probably doing homework and looking forward to hearing about Daddy's Day when he got home. The music seemed to touch something deep in the hearts of everyone present. Wellington found himself thinking about his own children, now grown and successful, but somehow distant from the man who had worked so hard to provide for them. Several other audience members wiped away tears as they were reminded of their own families and the sacrifices that love sometimes requires. When Marcus finished a Bach piece, Wellington stepped onto the stage and addressed the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have just witnessed something remarkable. We came here tonight to support the arts and celebrate musical excellence. And we have discovered that one of the most talented musicians in our city has been working among us unrecognized for 2 years. Wellington turned to Marcus. Marcus, I would like to make you an offer. The Thornfield Foundation is prepared to establish a full scholarship fund that will allow you to return to performing while maintaining financial security for you and your daughter. We want to support artists like you, not force them to choose between their gifts and their families. Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes as he realized what Wellington was offering: the chance to return to the career he loved without sacrificing his ability to care for Emma. Mr. Wellington, that is incredibly generous. But I need to ask, what about my daughter? She is my first priority, and any arrangement would need to allow me to be the father she needs. Marcus, any parent who would sacrifice their dreams for their child's well-being is exactly the kind of person we want to support. We will work out a schedule that puts your daughter first while allowing your talent to flourish. 6 months later, Marcus was performing regularly with the City Symphony Orchestra and giving solo recitals at Thornfield Hall. Emma attended many of his performances, sitting in the front row with a proud smile as she watched her daddy share his gift with the world. The custodial uniform had been replaced by concert attire, but Marcus never forgot the lesson he had learned that night, that true worth is not determined by job titles or social status, but by the love we show for our families and the courage we find to share our authentic selves with the world. Wellington kept a photograph in his office from that first evening, showing Marcus at the piano in his olive green uniform, a reminder that the most extraordinary people are often hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to see past the surface to recognize the gifts that lie beneath. And Emma, now 7 years old, tells everyone who will listen that her daddy is the best piano player in the whole world. Not because he performs in fancy concert halls, but because he gave up everything to take care of her and then found a way to follow his dreams without ever letting her down. This was GoldMind Stories.